that sends energy out into the world. And so we're really showing up for all beings everywhere. So I'm going to invite you to really see about that sense of support and see if you can kind of bring that back with you. And maybe make a little note to yourself to keep checking back in with yourself, to keep coming back to this is a resource. This support is a resource. And it's available. And then, when you open your eyes and you come back, so to speak, just look around and see everybody who's here. It's pretty amazing. And so now I think we'll do a little bit of announcements. Karen or Mary, our fabulous tech hosts. Karen, do you want to talk about the community agreements and the recording and all that?
Yeah, sure. As we posted about the recording, we're happy to pause anytime somebody would like us to pause, and not don't feel shy about asking for that because it happens frequently. And the other piece is that we have community guidelines that we're taking from Bhumi Sparsha. Just There's a link posted there for the long document, but there's 4 points to remember, and especially in our group discussions or sharings, confidentiality and taking space and sharing space, and speaking from a self focus, which can be very important to speak from your own experience. And finally, holding a compassionate presence for everybody. So that's it, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. So this is a moment where I like to invite anybody who's new to introduce themselves and tell us your name and where you're from, and maybe a sentence or so about your connection to Tara or how you got here.
Hi,
Hi,
my name is Judith Regier, and I live in Los Angeles. And Stephanie got me here. She told me about the group. I'm laughing. I'm a long time practitioner of Buddhism, mostly in the Zen tradition. And the last few years, I've been exploring new, different ways of practicing, and I've always been interested in Tara. So, causes and conditions, here I am.
Great.
And I've been listening quite a bit. 3 weeks ago, I got this connection, and I've been listening a lot to the tapes.
Oh, good. Well, welcome, Judith. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Anybody else that's new?
Yeah, I'm Alex. I'm new. This is my first time being here with you all live. Although, like Judith, I've seen the practice on YouTube, so I've been a little familiar that way. And I guess I practice sometimes with the Medicine Buddha group on Mondays too.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way I got in here. But yeah, glad to be here with you all. Yeah.
Yeah, you look familiar to me, Alex. That's probably where I've seen you at Medicine Buddha.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
glad you're
probably.
here.
Yeah.
Tara and
Yeah,
Medicine
good to be
Buddha,
here.
they're old buddies. You know what I mean? They get along really well. They have a lot in common. So anyway,
Yeah,
welcome. It's good to see you.
thank you. Yeah.
So Jeremy, you were gonna. I think all of us need as much loving kindness as we can possibly generate um, for ourselves and everybody else, but we often leave ourselves out. So, anyway, thank you, Jeremy, and welcome. And if you start to fall asleep, you can go get your coffee. We wrote about that a little bit. Is there anyone else who's new?
I'm new.
Hi, Krista.
I'm Krista. I've been a Buddhist practitioner for about 50 years, and most recently, for many years, part of Terragar organization. But I've always hesitated. There was always that hesitation to fully commit. And I've done non-dro, I've done it, I've
Wow.
but it was all in my head.
Hmm.
And I didn't even realize that. And Tara sort of found me, and I was in a bookstore, and I saw your book, Rachel, and I just knew this is what I have to buy. And it has changed my whole practice and all the things I've learned intellectually and tried to apply spiritually through your book and through Tara's um, inner being. It's all coming to fruition. And it's because of you. And here I am.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. And thank you for that. That's beautiful. Yeah, welcome. Really welcome.
And I'm from Vancouver Island in Western Canada, the farthest west of Canada that you can be. And I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you are here. Yeah, really welcome. And is there anybody else who's new? I think that might be it. And so Deb is letting you know that you've got a neighbor, Krista. So I was somewhat joking with Mary and Karen, our tech hosts. Thank God for our tech hosts. You know, I always have to say that because it's true. Thank Tara and everybody else. That this particular emanation of Tara reminds me of my entire spiritual journey. And so I promised I would not tell the whole thing because we will be here forever if I do. So, I wanted to say a couple of things. I want to tell a story. I want to read a passage from a book, and then I'm just going to see what happens next. But the thing I think that's absolutely crucial is the fact that there's really no culture on the planet that doesn't have some kind of mythology related to going into the darkness. And our particular culture, Western culture, seems to, let's say, shy away from that. That would be a very understatement of the century. So instead of recognizing there's this deep, ancient human, it's just part of our anatomy, it's part of our psyche, it's part of our bodies, it's part of our existence, the dark and the light. And that at some point in everybody's life, you meet darkness in different forms. And I think the thing I even want to be careful just to say this out loud because I won't get it right, but I think even the way we use the word darkness often has a negative connotation. And so, light is light. Oh boy, light. That's good. Let's go for the light, right? And that unfortunate spin on darkness has really caused a lot of problems. I think it's at the heart of all kinds of racial strife and disparity. Yeah, and I think it's the source of a lot of fear instead of realizing the darkness itself. I mean, the darkness is like the void, and that's one of the reasons I love the Black Madonna so much. And I have several of them. The one I want to show you here is small. She's really small. But this is the Black Madonna of Einsiedeln. She's in Switzerland. And this is how she's carved originally, with this very, very simple burgundy robe with the little gold belt, which I think is interesting, thinking of the colors of the Tibetan monks' robes. And if you go to Switzerland, Einsiedeln is where she is. It's about 30 miles from Zurich. If you go to her chapel, which is in a monastery, and it's a sort of cathedral-like place, but the chapel is separate apart from that. This is just one picture of that Black Madonna in one of her outfits. She has a lot of outfits. And if you're a little girl, you just are like, wow, look at these outfits, And I lived there for a long time. I went there all the time. And you can also see, she's in this sculpture, these clouds and sunbursts and lightning bolts of gold, right? And so it's interesting to me. I just love that underneath that is this very simple thing. And again, if you go there, it's just amazing. People come there from all over the world. And she's not huge either. I don't know if you really got close to her. Maybe she's 5 feet tall or something like that. But I will just say this. I was introduced to the Black Madonna in California in a course that was looking at the Synoptic Gospels through a Jungian perspective. And so that was a really interesting, it was a couple of weeks long seminar. It was actually amazing. And it was at that seminar that the women who ran all this, it was all on Native American territories. It was actually amazing. But they set up a room that had 4 Black Madonnas in it, one at every cardinal point of you could say, the medicine wheel. And that was the first time I ever saw a Black Madonna. This was like 1989 or something like that. It just blew me away. And so I started looking for her in different places, and I won't go all into it, but that's actually kind of how I ended up in Zurich, and that's how I met my teacher, and that's how I encountered Tara. So for me, that tie between the Black Madonna and Tara is really strong. So I will say, I'm just aware of a couple of things. They're really, I want to give a little bit of this history, and then I'm going to pause before we actually get into the practice and the components of the practice, just to get an update on people we've been praying for. And I think if there's anybody else we really need to put in the center of our practice tonight, but I want to just make a note of that I don't want to skip that, so I'm not going to. I want to let you know that. And at that point, I can tell you a little bit about what's been going on here. I'm happy to say right now everything is quiet. We'll see if it stays that way. So back to this history lesson. The Egyptian sun god Ra, the myth of the sun god is that he goes into the underworld every night. So when the sun goes, below the curve of the earth and it gets dark, the Egyptians felt like he had descended into the netherworld. And that his boat would travel down, 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 down to the very deepest point. And it would be at that point that it was the blackest, like pitch black dark. And at that point, there would be this spark of light. And from that spark of light, he could see just enough to follow that spark to come back up and make the journey back up to the upper world. So one of my analyst friends and someone I really love and really appreciate a lot, Andreas Schweitzer, wrote a book about this. And his interpretation of this myth is that that spark of light is absolutely new and different and fresh, and you could never see it if it weren't for the fact that everything had gone completely dark. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful teaching, because when we hit these incredibly dark times, we just can't imagine how we're going to come back out of them. Sometimes we have the most amazing realizations about our own lives or life in general or spirituality or, you name it. But it's new. And it's new because all of our other light projects have dimmed out, and we can see something that maybe would have not seen any other way. So I think that myth offers us that. Then there's the myth of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess. And, she made a descent into the lower world, and she made this descent voluntarily. There are other goddesses, Persephone, there are other goddesses that get sort of hauled off to the underworld, but Inanna went on purpose. And again, we could talk about her all night, and I just think we can't do that. But she descends 7 levels into the underworld, and at each level, she has to take off one more part of her ornaments, part of her armaments, whatever, until she is facing her sister, Ereshkigal, and she's completely naked. And Ereshkigal, in a fit of whatever, we don't really understand this completely, has her killed and hung on a peg. But there's a thing that goes on in the upper world where these little tiny beings manage to make their way into the underworld. And they come and they meet Ereshkigal, and they say, can we give her this? And it was the bread of life, the water of life. And Ereshkigal knew what they were up to, but she said yes. And they brought this to this, really, it's described in the myth as a green rotting corpse, but somehow she comes back to life and she ascends back into the upper world. So, this is actually the first crucifixion resurrection story. It's probably 5,000 years old. It's from the 3rd millennia BC. And again, it's a very complicated myth. They found the tablets, the clay tablets that this was inscribed on. In the last century, they found the Gnostic Gospels. They found these clay tablets with the story of Inanna. They found some original, I can't forget the stones that the I Ching used. Anyway, it was an incredible amount of stuff from the ancient world was discovered in the last century. And so this book, I would recommend to y'all if you're interested in it at all, is called The Myth of the Goddess, The Evolution of an Image. It was published in the early 90s. So this is what I want to read to you. They are saying, why is Sumeria so important? The Old and New Testaments are saturated with images that came originally from Sumeria and reached Judaic culture through the medium of Babylonian, Assyrian, and Canaanite culture. Only Egypt can rival Sumeria's pervasive influence. Much later and further to the west, the mythology of the Greeks and the Romans bear witness to the legacy of Sumerian images. And to the east, the rich mythology of Hinduism and Mahayana Buddhism reveals a common ground with Sumerian mythology. So when I read that sentence in 1993, it was like I practically, or whenever it was that I read it, it was in the early 90s, I practically just leapt out of my chair because, well, you can imagine why. But anyway, if you look at this praise to the Black Tara, the praise says, I praise the one who stamps with her foot and strikes the surface of the world's foundation with the palm of her hand, whose frowning expression masters the 7 levels of the underworld through the syllable hum. And I remember when I read this praise, I thought of Inanna immediately, but that was before I read this book. So the book was like, oh, you're sort of onto something. And then when I decided to write this book, I decided to do a little bit more research into the whole thing and found some people who had written about the fact that these practices sort of stand on a three-legged stool. One is the Sumerian mythology, the other is shamanism, and the other is goddess worship. So, yeah. I think for me, because this whole recognition of the interdependence of the religions has been so important and kind of, in a way, what seems to me completely obvious, but not so much to other people sometimes. It was like such a joy to read this book and realize it's an amazing book. It's like a small encyclopedia about the image of the goddess and its evolution. That somebody had done all the research and come to that conclusion. And so then this is the last little story I want to tell about that. When I was in Switzerland, to graduate from the Jung Institute, to get your diploma, you have to take all kinds of exams and write all kinds of things and so on and so forth. And so when you take your exams, you can actually pick the person you want to be your chief examiner. And then there's an expert, and you don't get to pick that person. You have no idea who that person is going to be. So the person I picked as my examiner was Andreas Schweitzer, this man I was just talking about, because I knew that he was very interested in all these things, right? And we had, many similar ideas. So I thought, great. I was kind of looking forward to this exam. So I decided that the premise of my exam was going to be the interconnectedness of all these religions. And that was Inanna and Kali and Tara, the Black Madonna, and the Buffalo Calf Woman from indigenous American spirituality. So I'm on the bus headed down to the Jung Institute, and I've got this book that I just showed you, and I've got a picture of Tara and a picture of Kali, and I actually have a pipe. I have a Native American pipe that I was able to, I purchased it, but I feel like it was a gift to be able to do that from a Lakota. And so I never keep the pipe bowl and the stem. They're never connected. I've really only used it 2 or 3 times. I may never use it again, but you don't put them together unless you're going to do a ceremony. But anyway, I took all these things and I was going to make this argument how these things are all connected. So the expert, who is an ethnologist, and she was Swiss, she leaned across the table. She's looking at all this. This is before I'd said anything. And she's leaning towards this pipe and this pipe bowl. And she was saying to me, can I pick this up? And for some reason, I don't know why, I got her confused in my mind with another analyst who's actually American. She lives there, but she's American. And so as I was getting ready to say, yes, you can pick it up, but you can't put the pieces together, this happened so fast. I thought, I think this is this American woman. She may already know that. And so out of my mouth came these words, well, so are you American? And you would think that I had said to her, did you just rob a bank and run over 5 people in the process? She just it was like, she stiffened her back and she said, no, I am not American. She said, I am Swiss and I am an ethnologist. And you can't do this. You can't say that all these things from all these different cultures are all related to each other. You can't do that unless you know everything about this and this and this and this and that. And I'm sitting there going, uh-oh. So when this is kind of a fun story to tell because I live to tell about it. But anyway, when she said, I am an ethnologist and I am Swiss, and when she said that in my head, I heard myself say, and I am screwed. So anyway, so Andreas is watching all this transpire and he's trying to calm the fire and everything. He said, Rachel, why don't you just pick one of these and talk about it? Why don't you pick Inanna and just talk about Inanna? And I sat there for a minute. I said, no, I'm going to talk about Tara. And I can tell you, I have no idea what I said from that point on. I left the room. I figured she can't fail me, but she's not going to give me a good grade. And he probably can't do much about that. But as long as I don't fail, it's okay. So that's what happened. So I'm here to tell you, like 30 years later, these things really are connected. And the amazing thing about this story to me is that the day after the exam, I was pretty upset, actually. I mean, it's funny now, but I was really upset then. I was kind of mad with Andreas that he didn't stick up for me, So before I went to talk to him about that, I had this dream. And he was sitting at a table, and it was like the table in the exam room. And there was nothing on the table, as opposed to all my stuff. There's nothing on the table. He was sitting down, and I was standing beside him to his left, and I took the palm of my hand and slammed it down on this table. And I said, these things are connected. And that was the end of the dream. So you can imagine Tara's praise. She strikes the foundation of the world with the palm of her hand anyway. And then when I told Andreas about the dream, he said, do you see emptiness in the dream? I said, what are you talking about? He said, there's nothing on the table. Your dream is also about emptiness. I'm like, well, all right. So, yeah, I'm just going to leave that there for now, but I do want to say that one of the true great joys of my life has been living into these various traditions. I just can't, I mean, when I think about some of my teachers or these rabbis, especially Reb Zalman, think about Lodrö Rinpoche, who knows all about this stuff, I just feel so lucky, and it's been a great joy. It's just been a real joy. So to the truth of interdependence and the interrelatedness of all things, and that is in the four immeasurables referred to the sacred happiness, which is sorrowless, I can just attest to the fact that it's endless, the joy that comes from that kind of learning these different connections. So I want to pause here before we go into the parts of the sadhana and do the actual practice. I know that Tara has a friend. She wants to bring this child to our Sangha. And I also wonder, Bill, if you have an update on Pam. So why don't we hear from Tara first? And then, Bill, if you'll give us an update on Pam, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. Can I come off recording?
So I would say, and this won't take long, that ICE descended on North Carolina, first in Charlotte, and arrested over 130 people and just, terrorized all kinds of people. And I don't know all the details about Charlotte. I just know the number of people who were arrested. They've left Charlotte. That's about 2.5 hours from here. And they came to Raleigh Tuesday night. And there is such a network in North Carolina of people who've been doing these trainings, and I think they're probably happening all over the country, but they're training volunteers. This is what you do, this is how you go out, and to have people actually go to locations where they expect them to turn up. And what they found is that if a group of people, like in no way aggressive or anything like that, but if a group of people get between the person they're after and the ice people, that they will go back, they'll turn around. And the thing that, there are two things about this for me personally that were just, it really does make me want to weep. It's like, so this church, y'all hear me talking about this radically progressive Baptist church where I teach Tara and other things happen. And this is why some churches need to have a building. It's expensive to keep up a building, but Pullen made the sanctuary available for training the night they were coming in to Raleigh. And it went out on this network of whatever, and 500 people came. And I was told that there were 1,000 people in the Triangle going out to all these communities, to all these different places. And then a friend of mine who's from Durham, they had a very similar event in Durham, and 500 people showed up for that. So I don't know what's going on in the rest of the country, but it's really clear that the people of North Carolina, and I don't know all the people who showed up, are getting in touch with their humanity and their connection to people. And that's my great and deep hope, that something inside of us wakes up to our deepest, the thing that we practice with all the time, to wake up to be of benefit to all beings, which is of course a benefit to ourselves. That's inherently who we are. We're not trying to make ourselves be something we're not. We're trying to get back to something that we actually are. And so it feels like what's happening, I hope, but it seems like it with that many people showing up, is that people's natural wish to show up and be there and keep folks safe and keep the community whole is what's going on. And I talked to some people in the local government system here today, and it's been very, very quiet. So the feeling is they might not be here, but we don't know for sure. They're still in North Carolina. And just because it's very, very quiet, we don't want to say they're gone, because they might just turn right around and come back. You know what I mean? So, but I do feel a sense of optimism for what didn't happen and for what did happen, and for what seems to be the case now. And then the other thing I wanted to share, which I feel like it surprised me, and I'm really grateful for it, and I don't want to forget it. I want to just keep pondering this. It's like I got on the local newspaper's website Tuesday night when I got home to see if I could see anything that was going on. And they had photos on the website, which are much more vivid than seeing them in a newspaper. They had a photo of one of the Border Patrol people. I don't know what you call them, one of the ICE agents. And, it's really up close. And there is this man in this camouflage outfit with the mask thing across his face and sunglasses and some kind of, I don't know what you call it. It's not a hat, but anyway. And when I saw that picture, I just felt brokenhearted. I felt like this person has erased themselves. This person has dehumanized himself. If nobody else can see who they are, then you can't know anything about that person, anything. And it feels like you can't do what they're doing without dehumanizing the people to whom you're doing it. But when I saw that picture, I thought, they've dehumanized themselves. That would be necessary. You couldn't do that if you hadn't done that to yourself first. And I remember, I don't know if any of y'all know who Etty Hillesum is, or she's a very famous Jewish person who died at Auschwitz and has wrote a lot of journals, and that got published, and her stuff is widely available. But she had that same experience of, I mean, in these camps, of looking at these young German soldiers and thinking, oh my God, what has happened to these people? And you can imagine that wasn't a very popular position for her to take, but it was something she felt very deeply. And I think it's what these teachings are after, so that we can actually recognize when we've lost touch with our own humanity. And I think that happens sometimes just because we're so critical of ourselves, not because we're necessarily going out and doing what these folks are doing, but how we can really be so judgmental and critical of ourselves. Or we can let the demons, as this tradition likes to call them, start holding sway. But to be able to hold in our consciousness that these people are human too, and whatever they're doing is horrible, and it's horrible for them too. So, and the last thing I'll say about that, and I think I've probably told this story before, and I think it's kind of been out there for a while, but I think it's true. I don't think it's just a story, that a Tibetan Lama who finally either got released or escaped from China. He'd been in prison camps and tortured many, many years. And when he got to Dharamsala, and His Holiness was asking him, speaking of Black Tar, what's your greatest fear? And he said, my greatest fear was that I would come to hate the people who were doing this to me. So I just want to offer that up because I think this is an extraordinarily difficult time right now, extraordinarily difficult. And so the more we can be compassionate towards ourselves and hold ourselves and notice, what am I doing, what am I not doing, but particularly, what do I need help with? And to find the courage to ask for help, whether it's asking Tara for help or asking a person for help. Sometimes when we're really in the dark and we're filled with a lot of doubt, that's when we stop practicing. I mean, have y'all ever noticed that the time you need it the most is when you don't do it? So I love to think about this Black Tara as this, and she is a fierce protector, as somebody who really accompanies us in the dark, and that she's somebody that we can really call on. And also because there's no judgment here, it's like whatever's our worst thing that's going on, we can offer that to her. So the idea that you have company in these dark spaces, and that company has to do with love and loving kindness, I think is huge. Yeah. Especially when it comes to overcoming fear. So I wanted to offer you a little poem, and then I think we'll either practice or we'll see if anybody has anything they'd like to say. There's some great stuff going on in the chat if y'all want to be sure you take a look at that. So here's this poem. This is from Izumi Shikibue, who was a Japanese Buddhist 11th century poet. Although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. Although the wind blows terribly here, the moonlight also leaks between the roof planks of this ruined house. So I think it could be time to practice. Does anybody have a burning comment they would like to make before we do that? Or even a smoldering comment?
Me.
Okay. So who said me?
Alagonda.
So do you want to go ahead?
Rachel, I just can't get my own picture right on the screen today, but what you've just been saying, what's happening in your country. I am so sad that this is happening to the world because it's also happening here in Australia, but it's on a much smaller level still. But it's creeping all around us. And how you've explained it today, I think has been absolutely beautiful. And I want to thank you for that because I've just been back to my home country, the Netherlands, and I discovered that my parents and the people in the village where they lived in the Second World War, Mum and Dad were very involved with the resistance. And yes, I lost, or that my father lost a brother, and my mother also lost relatives with that work.
Wow.
And yes, the things that are happening in Australia are also so unpleasant. And we are wondering what's happening to our world. But I want to thank you for today.
You're
That's all.
welcome. Thank you for saying that, Alejandro, because I think not only do we really need to call on the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, but we need to call on our ancestors. And by telling us that story, you're bringing your ancestors into the story. And, one of the things, honestly, that I really love about the fact that you can trace Inanna into Judaism and Christianity and Mahayana Buddhism and on and on and on. It's another great example about how our ancestors, these are our ancestors too.
Yeah.
It all goes so, so, so far back.
So far back. And, all right, we're always saying that things go in circles. It's always a circle. But I've always been hoping, and I still believe it is happening, things will improve. Things are improving. We learn more, we understand more. And for that reason, things will keep on evolving. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think part of that depends on us to keep doing what we do, including this practice.
Agreed, agreed. And when I first met Tara, it was Black Tara that came to me first. And I have so much respect and love for Black Tara because she's done so much for me in the last 5 years, 5.5 years. And I'm so thankful for that. And I had to have spinal surgery earlier this year. And that's why I haven't made our meetings because all my rehabilitation work has been on Fridays. And I haven't been able to come because it's Friday here in Australia, lunchtime. And but now I've shifted those rehabilitation sessions so that I can come again, and I'm so thankful.
Good. Well, me too. It's good to see you, Alaganda. So, Stephanie,
Yeah, I'm all black.
it's okay. Stephanie, do you want to say something and then we
I
will?
do, and it is actually just burning a hole. So, I learned from someone here, or some plural, someones, about the Emerald podcast. And just before I went to Spain, I listened to this one that I'm putting in the link. It's about the Divine Mother of the Universe. And one of the things that he said in the podcast was how humanity has been in the act of stamping out the goddess, and she's like a weed. She just comes up everywhere. And I listened to that, and then I went to Spain, and I know it's a Catholic country, but Jesus really is an afterthought in Spain. It is all about Mary. And there are Black Marys and crowned Marys and Marys with wings and Marys with angels. And I mean, almost every cathedral we went in was like all Mary art. And then there'd be the crucifix. It's like, oh yeah, and Jesus, whatever, is what I felt like.
That's funny.
And I was just kind of like going around Spain cheering for the goddess. I'm like, yeah, bring it. So the other thing that you said, and I just wanted to respond to this. So many years ago, some of you probably are old enough to remember Ben Weir was a hostage that was held by the Iranians, right? Iranians
Rock. Yeah.
back in the 80s. And he
Yeah.
was there for like 9 years. And he was also the father of one of my college friends. So when he came out of, when they finally released him, I did meet him. And first of all, the only time that I've ever experienced that kind of presence is when I've been in the presence of a lama or some realized teacher. It was this profound spiritual emanation. But he said what he did every single solitary day, the entire time he was in captivity, was he was chained to a radiator and he used the links like a rosary and prayed every day. And he said he learned the names of all of his captors and he included them in his prayers every single day for 9 years. And that kind of like dedication to compassion really literally transformed his humanity. So
Amazing. Thank you, Stephanie. I've never heard about that. That's incredible.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Well, let's do this practice and then we'll see. And I want to say, which I always say, the practice will probably take till about 8:30, and then sometimes people want to stay on and have some things to say, which I welcome. And I just want to let everybody know that whenever you need to leave, it's fine to leave. And if you like to stay on, it's fine to stay on. So here we go. I think that, this is a moment again where just make this shift from outer conversation. I'm going to keep talking, but really this is an inner conversation because all of us will be, we'll be together, but each of us will be encountering Tara in the way that we encounter Tara. And it's interesting, tonight I was reading a commentary about this Tara by Zazep Rinpoche, and he talked about the importance of space. And, this idea that we start the practice as we will now by generating an image of space in our mind's eye. And what that really does is generate space in our mind. Because if the object of what you're focusing on is space, it really does put us in touch with the spaciousness of our unconsciousness. And one of the things he pointed out was we have to have space in our minds for Tara to arise. So I really love this idea of, it's just another way of talking about starting with this image of space, vastness of space that contains everything that ever was or is or will be. And everything is in potential. It also means that anything can arise out of space. Things can change in a heartbeat. And that's not always good, but sometimes it really is good. These unexpectedly wonderful things can develop. And part of our practice is helping to shape what develops out of space. That's part of what we're doing. And so here what we do is we just imagine that all that potential and what could appear, that what does appear is green Tara and the entire mandala of the 21 Taras. And if it helps you all at all to look at these tankas behind me, please do it. But many of you already have a pretty clear sense of what this feels like to you or looks like to you or how you sense it. You may not necessarily be a person who's a visualizer. But for me, I really like thinking and seeing and feeling green Tara appearing in a subtle body of green light in the center of this mandala of all these emanations of varying colors, various different subtle bodies of light surrounding her. And that they're all seated in this very famous position with one leg in the meditation pose, the left leg in the meditation pose, and the right leg is extended outward because Tara is ready to come to our assistance the minute we call on her. And that her right hand is open, the gesture of supreme giving, which means she gives us everything, including complete awakening. And her left hand is at her heart in the gesture of refuge, holding this beautiful blue Uphala flower. And so now we bring in our teachers. We can think of our teachers, our helpful, compassionate ancestors, the helpful, compassionate spirits of the land. To think of your particular teachers from whatever traditions they may have come from. They may be living now, they may not be. But I kind of like to imagine them almost like as in a semicircle, kind of sitting around Tara, between her and all the emanations. That's kind of how I see them. And I just watch them coming in, and I like to think specifically, who are they? And just ask them. Lama Rod calls this our homecoming circle, to support our practice and to support us and all the beings that we will be praying for, that we actually already are praying for. And so we imagine our teachers, and then we think of our loved ones and supporters and friends, people with this similar wish or hope to find their way to waking up for the benefit of all beings, to completely waking up. And they're surrounded by their friends and loved ones and supporters. It just goes on into infinity. The people that can benefit from this practice are unlimited. And so we can also think of any of the people we've already mentioned. You may have particular people in mind that you want to hold in the energy of this practice for fear, for love, to help their fears be allayed, that people feel loved, and people experience healing. And that this can also go to groups of people in countries all over the world and this country. Wow. The need is huge, and yet the people we can pray for is only limited by our memory and imagination. And there are 50 of us on this call, so I think we can really generate prayers for many, many people. And we have many teachers here with us also. And so as we focus on all these beings, we think about going for refuge. We actually pray to go for refuge to Tara, for all these beings and with all these beings. that we take refuge in the enlightened consciousness that Tara embodies and mirrors back to us, that's also within us, who we are. And we take refuge in the Dharma, the wisdom teachings of all the great traditions, the oral traditions, the written traditions, many of whom, or of which we know about and many of which we don't. But we still take refuge in these wisdom traditions and in our Sangha and the other Sanghas that we belong to, because many of us do belong to more than one, and we've belonged to other communities in our lifetimes, and we're actually taking refuge in the communities of the Sanghas and the practitioners that go back through time and history to the time when these practices first came into the world in India, centuries and centuries and centuries ago. So the shorthand for that is we're taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And we ask that through the power of generosity and the other perfections, that we could wake up 100% for our own benefit and the benefit of all living beings. And we really, really, really pray and ask and hope that all beings might have happiness and the causes of happiness, that all beings would be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow, that all beings might come to understand we cannot be separated from the sacred happiness which is sorrowless, and that we could live in equanimity, free from attachment to those that we hold close and aversion to those we keep at a distance, that we could be free from attachment and aversion, that we could live believing in the equality of all that lives. And just let the energy of those prayers ripple out. They're so important in their own right. And then comes the mantra of emptiness, Om Sabhawa Shuddha Sarva Dharma Sabhawa Shuddhoham, a reminder that nothing exists inherently, separately on its own. Everything is interdependent. And out of that vast web of connectivity, we have this whole Tara Mandala, and now we're going to invite Black Wrathful Tara to come into the foreground. And she's black in color. It says here she has a slightly wrathful expression. Some of the other lineages, she's extremely wrathful. She does appear on a lotus throne and a sun disk, and so really only the more wrathful emanations of Tara appear on a sun disk. So that's another sign and symbol of her, this energy that she has, this fierce compassion. One of the things Azet Rinpoche says, you can't be nice all the time. Sometimes you have to create a boundary for yourself or somebody else. So this wrathful energy, which is based on fierce compassion, we need it. And here she is to help us with that. And she's holding this black vase, which contains these weapons which destroy gegs, which are beings and non-beings who basically like to do harm. And again, her left hand is at her heart in the gesture of refuge. Her top three chakras are adorned with the syllables Om Aham. And the blue syllable hum in her heart begins to radiate blue light into the realms of the wisdom beings and the initiatory deities. This ray of light is like an invitation to them to come and be with us, to join with us, support us in this practice. Ehehe Zahum Bamho. And we imagine that they come, these wisdom beings, these initiatory deities, they come. are with us, the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the energy of Tara, filling up this mandala. And then we ask the awakened ones for purification. Om Sara Tathagata Abhishitsamam. And here we imagine these white dakinis appearing. They're just, again, they're just like goddesses appearing, these subtle bodies of white light. And they have these silks around them. You can just imagine they have all this imagery that has to do with wind and motion and air. They can be from one place to the next instantaneously. So when we ask for purification, these dakinis appear. Each one of them is holding a white vase. And this vase contains this nectar that's like liquid light. And each one of us can imagine one of them standing in front of us and pouring this nectar into our open crown chakra. And I really invite you to see if you can kind of kinesthetically imagine what is it like to have a river of light pouring through me right now. And that any of the difficult emotions that have been arising or the energies that feel like they just get stuck, that as this light pours through us, it really can dissolve all that. And as it leaves our body, it takes all that with it, at least for now, at least for this moment. It's just like, you go to the gym before you do the workout. Sometimes you take a shower. This is like we're taking a light shower before doing the practice to clear our energy fields. It's really a gift and a blessing. And so we just allow that to happen. And then we imagine one of these dakinis is pouring this nectar into the open crown chakra of black wrathful Tara. And this one drop overflows just above her crown and then transforms into the Buddha Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. And he appears above her head in a subtle body of red light. He's a very, very peaceful, brilliant Buddha, primordial Buddha. And I think this is a moment where I just like to invite all of us, including myself, to make personal offerings to Tara, to offer her anything you want to offer her. Challenges, difficulties, joys, pleasures, things you hope for. Really offering her our deepest wishes and prayers and hopes. But just to give yourself the space to think, what do I want to offer this particular emanation of Tara? It could be doubt and fear and anger. It could be anything. Joy. Just imagine that you're offering her everything. And that she's delighted by that. She's a fully awakened being. There's not much she hasn't seen. So we can be confident that she can transform anything we offer her into a blessing. And to even imagine that this blessing comes back to us with a felt sense of loving kindness. That there's just none of the judgment that we sometimes do towards ourselves when we're having difficult times. Just imagine that all these offerings are transformed into blessings, and they come back to us like being showered with flower petals, and the blessings of loving kindness comes with it as well. And then we move into the traditional offering practice. And we call on our friend, the blue wrathful deity, to clear away all our obstacles. And then we also remind ourselves of emptiness one more time. Om Benzamrita Kundali Hana Hana Humpe. Om Sobawa Shuddha Sarwa Dharma Sobawa Shuddhoham. And so here we imagine this blue wrathful deity, Amrita Kundali, emerging from our heart. He's just clearing away any obstacles we have to our imaginations that we can offer Tara everything. And recently I've talked with other folks doing Tara practice of, it's like we're offering Tara and all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas this banquet, food and water and light, flowers, incense. I like to imagine that we're offering all these things out to them and that they can take them, actually distribute them wherever they're needed. It's like a food bank. That's one of the things that I really enjoy doing, and you might not want to do that, but I just offer that to you if you're interested. So everything becomes empty again, and from emptiness, the syllable Om begins to resonate and vibrate. And as it does that, it creates these beautiful treasure vases. And each vase has inside of it another syllable Om. And then from these treasure vases begins to pour out these offering substances, clear, pure, unhindered, and unending. They are limitless, these offering substances. Om Aham, Om Aham, Om Aham. You can just imagine these things pouring out of these vessels. Om Aryatara, Sapariwara, Argam, Pajam, Puspe, Dupe, Alake, Genje, Nevaje, Shabda Pratisya, Soha. I praise the one who stamps with her foot and strikes the surface of the world's foundation with the palm of her hand, whose frowning expression masters the 7 levels of the underworld through the syllable hum, which is the wisdom syllable. And then while we say the mantra, we're going to visualize from her heart and also from this vase in her hand that these very intense rays of light stream out in the form of flames, lightning, and weapons which destroy enemies and gegs. And so, these are the enemies, and the gegs are really these awful disturbances of energy that cause people to do things that are really destructive, and sometimes it refers to natural disasters. It's just energies that do harm, and that Tara's light just dissolves all of that. And so, I just invite you all to see that however you want to see it, and feel into it the way that you want to feel into it. The basic idea is that this light is dissolving any kind of negativity and creating a lot of protection. That can be very life-giving. Om Tari Tu Vajra Mahapadye Basmin Kursoha. So this Tara is asking Tara to use her foot, that's Pada, use her foot to grind down into dust any of these obstacles. It's a very, it's not a minor request that we're asking of Tara. We're just saying, look, you need to really, this stuff needs to go. It needs to be dissolved, and we need this loving kindness and protection to be in the field, accessible. Om Tari Tu Vajra Mahapadye Basmin Kursoha. 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 Om Tari Tutari Turvajra 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 Mahapadye Basmin Kursoha.
So as we're resting in this silence, which is another form of space and honestly another doorway into emptiness, because everything sort of rests in that silence, and various things can come up for each of us. And what I'm remembering is several different teachers, Tibetan teachers, talking about this Tara in particular, addressing the most subtle obstacles. And that suggests to me things that can be so subtle that they're outside of our awareness. And I'm thinking about what's happening to this beautiful young cousin, this baby cousin of Tara's, that what we're offering to her, wrapping her up in this, it's almost like swaddling clothes of light and love and care. This very tender, vulnerable being who, God willing, survives all of this and won't remember it. But hopefully there's being an imprint made for her of love and care through this practice. And I just want to invite all of us to imagine that there are parts of us that are that tender, that vulnerable, that subtle, so far outside of our awareness, maybe even pre-verbal memory, that affect us in ways we don't even understand. That somehow this black Tara, it's like being able to see in the dark. That this black, protective, compassionate, mothering energy, all-knowing energy, can hold all these parts of ourselves, including these most tender, vulnerable parts that we may be even scared to know about ourselves. That she can actually dissolve the obstacles to those things becoming conscious so we can tend to them. Even if they don't become fully conscious, that the thing that could become conscious is our possibility to offer loving kindness to ourselves when we find ourselves being very, very anxious and we're not even sure why. And that we can offer that out into the world, to all these places all over the world where so many people are suffering and need this love and care and attention. So, yeah, I just offer that to you as an invitation to really go deeply into the practice of offering loving kindness to yourself and your fear and anxiety and other people, and asking for help whenever you need it. And knowing that Tara is available and this energy of compassion and wisdom is always there. And so just holding that, in our bodies and hearts and minds,
And then we begin the practice, begin the part of the practice where we end the practice, which takes a little doing. That we first focus one last time on Black Wrathful Tara. And we see her receding back into her place in the mandala. We look once again at the entire mandala, just vivid with color and light and energy. And then we thank all of our teachers. We thank them for coming and supporting our practice, all the ancestors, all the beings, and we ask them to return to the natural realms from which they came. And we see them dissolving back into light and space. Knowing they don't go very far, you can always ask them to come right back when you need them. But we let them go for now. We thank them and we ask them to return to their natural realms. And likewise with our friends and loved ones and supporters, we thank them for coming. All the beings that we've invited to either receive the benefit of the practice or to offer their energy to it, we invite them to return to their realms from which they came. We see them dissolving back to light and space. And then we take one last look at this mandala of Tara, green Tara in the center, the 21 around her. And we see the entire mandala dissolve into light and space. It's like a fantastic light show. As all this beautiful color and light just spreads out, full of energy and healing and light into the entire universe. And we can also imagine it comes into us, into our whole body, also into our central channel, comes down into our hearts, into the mandala of Tara inside our own heart. And I love to say we're back where we started with our image of space and vastness, because it never goes anywhere. It's the nature of the universe, this space, emptiness. Yeah. And then we dedicate the practice. We ask whatever positive potential, whatever merit, whatever healing energy has come from our doing this practice together. We dedicate it to the healing and awakening of all beings everywhere, with absolutely no exceptions. And remember, that includes you. Yeah. So we dedicate the merit and we give thanks. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hey, Midge.
Well, good to see you.
It's good to see you too. So does anyone want to have something to say? It seems like when people say things that it benefits everybody. So I just want to remind you of that. And hey, Pam, Bill gave us an update before you got here. We're glad to see you. You're looking well. I hope you feel as good as you look. Yeah. Gargi.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't unmute myself. I wanted to ask you, what is the difference? Both are Black Tara, Black Wrathful Tara, and Black Tara. What is the subtle difference when sometimes when I see negativity in myself rising up, and so I my mind goes here and there.
Yeah, I know that feeling. You know, I think I imagine the differences are subtle, and so I would hate to say, oh, here's a definitive answer to that. And I also know, I just remember from the teachings I got from Rinpoche when he gave this initiation and some conversations I had with him, that the seventh Tara is really focused on negativity that comes from the outside. And he said that's unusual. You know, a lot of times we just think of all this stuff as being generated from the inside, but when you look at the praise of that Tara, that's where you see shamanism, because it talks about it overcomes the magic circles of the enemy, and those are like hexes and curses. And so, in the old circumstances in which these things arose, the idea that Tara could help you with intense negativity that was coming at you that's being generated from somebody else. And, you know, I think it's important to think about that because, you know, ice is a good example. Sometimes something does come at you that it's not an inner, it's not an inner problem. It's not an inner attitude. It's a real thing. It's also true that we can have inner negativity that gets generated as a response to that. And so it's very helpful. I think it's helpful to feel protected from the outside and the inside. Just like the Lama, the story I told earlier. I don't know about you guys, but when I find myself dissolving into a space of antipathy for anybody, it quickly becomes pretty toxic. I don't care how much I want to rationalize it. So that's not a perfect answer, Gargi, but
No, it helps because sometimes I saw I was being very naive about negativity, like just didn't think that it exists. Sometimes would overlook it.
yeah, I think it does exist. It's one of the things I appreciate about Jung. He really worried that people were not interested in talking about the reality of evil. So however you parse it, I think it exists. But that doesn't mean we succumb to it either, you know. So
May wisdom dawn on me.
yes, thank you. May wisdom dawn on all of us. Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. A little touch of humor here. Help. What's her name? Annie Lamott. I think she said something like there are only two prayers worth saying, help, 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 and thank you, thank you, thank you. So anyway, there's probably another one, but I'm not remembering it. Anybody else? Does anybody else want to share anything? Pamela.
He needs to unmute.
You're muted still, Pamela. You're still muted.
I've only been in this practice with you all for 3 months, and yet in the most extreme difficulties in ICU, with dangerously plummeting blood pressure and very heavy drugs, I felt the Sangha.
Wow.
And that was in my mind. And yes, there were drugs, but no matter, because there are drugs, you can still think of many things. And in the past, when I've been in extremis, many negative things happen. And that did not happen. I felt the Sangha. I felt the authenticity of the Sangha, and I felt inches above what was happening.
Wow.
And it's those inches that make it so that you can breathe, make it so that you can think a little bit, make it so that you can help the physicians make decisions, make it so that you can remember love and not just be screaming in your head. And so I want to thank all of you because I felt you there. I felt the group, I felt individuals, and along with other communities I'm in, but I haven't even felt those communities before, no matter how wonderful they are. But the Sangha has allowed me to feel those communities too. And even though I don't know any of you except Bill personally, um, I I hope I felt you there, whether you felt there or not. And that is that's the difference between plummeting and rising up. And for that, you have my gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you for telling us that. Yeah, that's pretty incredible, honestly. I think we all need to know that that can happen. Like if it can happen to you, it can happen to us,
It
right?
can happen. It can
Yeah.
happen. And I've been in those situations a number of times before. This particular time, my healing, my recovery, my release from pain has been faster than it's ever been, even though I'm older. And some parts of the rebuild were more difficult than in the past, technically more difficult, and had more metal and more stuff. And I don't think that it's naive, and I don't think it's made up, that this practice and being able to call Tara in the dark, being able to take refuge in the Sangha, the Dharma, and the Buddha is the reason that this recovery is at 5 weeks is faster than the last time. It was 3 months before I came to this spot of physical recovery.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Pamela, thank you. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And it's so good to see you.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's
All of
wonderful
you
to see
too.
you. Thank you. Allison.
Yeah, I was wondering if I could have maybe the
Recording
recording
journal. Yeah.
for just a moment. Um,
Generous in a lot. You're very generous in a lot of different ways, with me personally, but also with each other, and showing up in the way you do, and the level of attention that you bring to this, attention and intention. And I just like today is a great example. I was really, 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 really tired coming into this practice. It's been a thing here. And there's every other thing going on too. And Karen was saying, which is very sweet before we came, she says, "Is there anything you need?" I said, "No, as soon as I see all their faces, I'll be fine." And it's true. So anyway, it really is true. It's wonderful to see you all and hear you. I appreciate the fact that many of you are willing to contribute and say things, because as I say every daggone time, we learn from each other. We really learn from each other. So anyway, it's 9 o'clock. It's hard to say goodbye, but I think it's time. So I just say to you all, take exquisite care of yourselves, please, in these times. And we'll just all keep praying for each other. And yeah. And I look forward to seeing you next month in December. And I don't know what to say. Happy compassion, happy heart opening. Yeah. Happy presence.
thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rachel.
Good night. Good
Thank
night.
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sangha.
Rachel. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Rachel. Yeah.
Thank you.
Please take care.